Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to look at the living, intelligent, infinite field of energy that surrounds and permeates everything, but also exists beyond time and matter, and which everything is a part of. It is, in Joe Dispenza's terms, called the infinite field of awareness. For most people, this field is invisible, but if you are going through a spiritual awakening, or in any way have started to open up to your spiritual nature, you may be able to detect it as subtle movements of energy in the air all around you. Joe Dispenza's work revolves around one central idea: we are not limited by the physical world or by the stories we've been told about who we are. Central to his works is this infinite field of awareness, which he also calls the quantum field, or more simply, the field. It can be good to keep in mind that this is not a mystical metaphor, but a direct reference to the principles of quantum physics, neuroscience, and epigenetics. It is not something to believe in, but, as said, something that can be experienced directly, which is true for many phenomena of the spiritual realm that, for most people throughout the ages, have merely been parts of the realm of beliefs and hopes, but which, for many now, are becoming lived reality. As stated a moment ago, the field is not separate from us. We are already immersed in it, but we usually fail to recognize it because our attention is dominated by the familiar, by routines, memories, emotions, and the senses. The field is accessed by shifting awareness beyond the body, the environment, and linear time. In this expanded state, we can move our consciousness into the space where all potentials exist. Dispenza describes the field as a realm of infinite possibilities, a dimension where the blueprint of every version of you already exists, healthy, healed, abundant, and connected. The process of coming into contact with it requires us to interrupt the cycle of being our familiar self. This self is not a fixed entity, but a bundle of neurological habits. Most people think the same thoughts, feel the same emotions, and perform the same behaviors every day. These repetitive loops create a predictable personal reality. To connect with the field, we must break this cycle and become nobody, going nowhere, in no time. This doesn't mean becoming nothing in a nihilistic sense. It means stepping out of our conditioned identity. In Dispenza's terms, when we forget the body, disconnect from our environment, and leave behind the construct of time, we move into pure awareness. And in that space, we enter the field. Dispenza teaches that when we access this space in meditation, something measurable happens. Brainwaves shift from beta, the alert and analytical state, into slower and more synchronized alpha and theta waves. In this state, the body begins to fall asleep while the mind remains aware. The door to the subconscious opens. This is the space where change becomes possible, not just mental change, but biological change. The field responds not to what we want, but to who we are being. If we try to influence it while holding on to frustration, fear, or doubt, the signal is incoherent. But if we enter the field in a state of coherence, calm, clear, and aligned, then our electromagnetic signature matches the frequency of our intention. The heart and brain come into sync. This is the condition under which transformation can occur. To get into the state of heart-brain coherence, you need to feel into your heart. You know when you get this right when you feel a sensation in your heart area. It can be a tingling sensation, but if you have many emotional blockages, you may also feel discomfort, such as fear, anxiety, or even nausea. In heart-brain coherence, you instantly come into contact with the infinite field. But emotional blockages disrupt this connection by bringing you out of the present moment and into automatic thoughts. You need to notice when this happens. Bring your awareness back to the present moment. Again, feel into your heart and allow the emotions to be felt and released. The field and the body know what to do with the emotions. It's when the mind gets in the way that the emotions are hindered from releasing on their own. However, the mind has a tendency to sneak back in unnoticed, and it can take some practice to learn to recognize when this is happening. Dispenza's approach is not about visualization alone. It's about embodying the emotion of the future you desire before it happens. The field does not respond to simple thoughts, but to thoughts combined with elevated emotions. Gratitude, love, freedom, and joy are the emotions that align us with our future. When we feel these emotions as if the change has already occurred, we are no longer waiting for healing or success. We are becoming the version of ourselves who already has it. To reach this state consistently, Dispenza outlines a sequence in his meditative framework. First, we enter into a deep state of rest by slowing the breath and becoming aware of space, the space around the body, and then the space beyond. As attention leaves the body and enters the field, the identification with the familiar self weakens. Then we set a clear intention, a specific change we wish to experience. This could be physical healing, a new job, emotional balance, or a deeper spiritual connection. The key is clarity. Equally important is the elevated emotion that goes with it. When we bring that future emotion into the present moment, not faking it, but actually generating it, the field responds. It begins to rearrange reality because it is non-local, intelligent, and sensitive to coherent signals. In this process, we don't force change, we become the change. For many people, generating elevated emotional states without external triggers can feel unnatural at first. Dispenza suggests starting small by recalling a single memory that brought you true appreciation or joy, or by focusing on something you genuinely care about. You can also help this process by tapping into heart-brain coherence. The goal is not to fake emotions, but to shift attention to anything that already feels nourishing, even slightly. With practice, the body begins to recognize these feelings as familiar, and over time it becomes easier to generate them from within, independent of circumstances. The emotional state becomes a choice, not just a reaction. This does not mean that we have to force anything, but what it does mean is that we need to start practicing directing our attention both internally and externally. It could be good to know that we can only entertain one thought stream at the time. What seems like many thought streams running simultaneously is really the mind skipping between different thought streams uncontrollably. You can observe how this plays out for yourself by observing your thoughts for a bit. In this context, affirmations can be very useful, regardless of what you believe about them. If you, for example, decide to repeat "I am rich" over and over again, like a mantra every time thoughts of lack enters your mind, you do break up these thought streams, whether you actually believe what you replace them with or not. You are thus effectively disconnecting from a part of the field that is tied to lack and limitation. When we sustain this internal state long enough, changes begin to occur in the body. The nervous system rewires, new hormones are released, and the brain starts to signal the body in new ways. The immune system, endocrine system, and even gene expression respond to this new internal order. This is not imagination, it is biology. The field interacts with our inner world, and that interaction leaves a physical mark. People often expect the external world to change first, but Dispenza emphasizes that reality shifts only when we maintain our internal alignment, regardless of external conditions. This is a core principle. The field mirrors who we are being. If we meditate and then return to our daily life filled with anxiety and judgment, the signal is lost. But if we carry the elevated emotion into waking life and embody the future state across the day, the field begins to organize reality to reflect that signal. Dispenza's research includes thousands of brain scans, heart coherence measurements, and biological markers collected during his workshops. These data show measurable shifts in brain activity and chemistry during meditative states. In some cases, spontaneous healings have occurred, including conditions deemed irreversible. But according to Dispenza, these are not miracles. They are predictable outcomes of a new relationship with the field. So, how do we interact with the field beyond meditation? Dispenza teaches that this connection is not limited to a seated practice. Once we've made contact through meditation, the goal is to live from that state of awareness, to wake up and choose the elevated emotion before any event in the world gives us a reason. This reversal of cause and effect places us in a creative relationship with the field. What is important to recognize clearly here is that this sense of being bound by linear time and cause and effect is not our true natural state, but a temporary part of the limitations that are parts of the human experience. These limitations are not fixed within this realm either, but right now they are part of what we collectively agree on, and it will take time for this new understanding to be fully understood, accepted, and integrated into our lived experience. If meditation, for one reason or another, seems inaccessible to us, we can also come into contact with the field through other practices that are aimed at bringing our attention into the present moment, as opposed to being lost in habitual thoughts about the past or the future. These are practices such as mindfulness, many forms of yoga, qigong, and so on. Anything that helps us stay grounded in the present moment. When we become more interested in who we are becoming than in who we have been, our attention shifts. We begin to catch ourselves when we fall back into old thoughts or emotions. And when we choose differently, when we feel gratitude instead of resentment or compassion instead of fear, we are refining our signal. Each time we make that choice, we strengthen new neural pathways and weaken the old ones. The body begins to trust the mind again, and the mind begins to serve a vision larger than survival or habit. Dispenza suggests that the field knows us only by our frequency. This is not metaphorical. It is rooted in the measurable electromagnetic signature we emit. Every thought produces a signal. Every emotion carries a frequency. When the two are aligned, the signal becomes coherent. This is when our influence on the field becomes meaningful. Not because we are commanding it, but because we are resonating with it. Let's pause for a moment here, because it's important to understand what we are talking about, namely an expanded view of communication. We usually primarily communicate, at least as far as conscious communication goes, through spoken or written language, and secondarily through body language and subtle emotional cues. But here, communication happens through frequency and resonance. In a very real sense, you are communicating with a living intelligence, and this is the language that this intelligence speaks. As our connection to the field deepens, we begin to feel less separate from the world around us. The boundary between the inner world and the outer world becomes more fluid. This shift in perception is not abstract. It comes with a felt sense of unity, timelessness, and ease. The body relaxes, the mind quiets. There is no need to control or predict, because we are no longer operating from the limited view of the familiar self. Instead, we are perceiving from a broader state of awareness. Dispenza points out that this state often brings synchronicities. These are meaningful coincidences that occur without logical planning. They are not accidents. They are indicators that our internal world is affecting external outcomes. When we are coherent, the field responds with feedback. Unexpected opportunities, chance encounters, and sudden clarity are signs that we are aligned with the field. We no longer need to chase outcomes. They begin to find us. In this space, healing becomes more than recovery from illness. It becomes integration. When we release the emotional residue of the past, we free the energy that was bound in survival. That energy can then be used for growth, creativity, and connection. The body no longer functions as a record of the past, but as a vehicle for the future. According to Dispenza, this is how people not only reverse disease, but also transform their lives. relationships improve, purpose becomes clearer, and a sense of fulfillment emerges. Interacting with the field also reshapes our sense of time. As we saw a moment ago, time is not an absolute, but part of this human experience that we are sharing right now. Most people live in anticipation of the future or in reaction to the past without questioning it. The present moment is only a means to an end. But in meditation, when the senses withdraw and the inner world becomes primary, the experience of time dissolves. The more we practice this state, the more we can carry that timelessness into waking life. We begin to respond rather than react. We are less affected by circumstances and more attuned to the quality of our inner state. In this, it's important to remember that, for the vast majority, this is a process, and it's not about perfection, it is about awareness. Each time we fall into an old pattern and choose to realign, we strengthen our capacity to stay connected. You are not failing because you still react to the circumstance in your life. Just by noticing that this is happening, but neither judge your reactions nor sweeping them under the rug, you are furthering your shift. There is no better or worse here. Neither is there any rush. Those are the ways of the world, and you are learning a different way now, which takes exactly as much time and effort as it needs to. This shift creates what Dispenza calls a feedback loop. The more coherent our signal, the more aligned our experiences become. And the more those experiences confirm our new identity, the more we trust the process. This feedback loop strengthens the relationship between the self and the field. It becomes a lived experience, not a belief system. We move from theory into embodiment. This is another reason why you cannot expect to live in full alignment immediately. It is possible, but it is not likely, and there is no shame in struggling with it. As this relationship with the field becomes more stable, the way we live begins to change. We start to prioritize internal alignment over external validation. Instead of reacting to conditions, we tune into possibility. This doesn't mean we become passive or detached from life. On the contrary, we become more engaged, but from a place of inner steadiness rather than fear or striving. Our choices reflect a deeper intelligence rather than habit or impulse. Dispenza emphasizes that the field is not reserved for a few or accessed through special knowledge. It is universal, immediate, and always available. The key is willingness to step beyond the known self, to suspend disbelief, and to feel the future before it arrives, because from the timeless perspective it is, not in a metaphorical, but a very literal sense, already here. This is not about escaping reality, but about participating in its unfolding from a new vantage point. When we live this way, we begin to create without effort. We are no longer trying to make something happen. We are letting the field express through us. This is not passive, but highly creative. It requires clarity, willpower, and emotional maturity. But it also brings a kind of freedom that is not dependent on conditions. That freedom is the signature of coherence. Dispenza's work invites us to take full responsibility for our inner world, not as a burden, but as a path to possibility. The field doesn't respond to what we want with our words. It responds to what we signal with our state of being. When that signal is coherent, consistent, and emotionally aligned, the field begins to reflect back a new reality. What emerges from this process is not only transformation, but integration. We don't just change parts of our lives, we change the foundation from which our lives unfold. We become more conscious of how we think, feel, and choose. And in that awareness, we are no longer at the mercy of circumstances. We begin to participate in life with a different kind of intelligence, not intellectual, but intuitive, embodied, and connected. In summary, Joe Dispenza describes the infinite field of awareness as an intelligent, non-local dimension of energy that we interact with through our state of being. When we step beyond our identity, environment, and sense of time, we can access this field through meditation. By aligning clear intention with elevated emotion, we send a coherent signal into the field, which then reflects that signal as changes in our biology and reality. The more we live from this state, with awareness, coherence, and emotional alignment, the more the field responds in kind, guiding healing, synchronicities, and transformation from the inside out. What is important to understand and put into perspective here is that we are learning that reality is so much more than we have been led to believe. We are learning to interact with aspects of reality that we could only dream of, in ways that are unfathomable to the ordinary mind. But once you are starting to just catch a glimpse of the reality of this, there is no real going back. Your mind will resist, feel overwhelmed, and try to bring you back into the familiar. But as the journey progresses, you will more and more feel the pull towards accepting uncertainty, let go, and trust. Over time, the field is no longer something we visit during meditation. It becomes part of our daily awareness. We begin to live from it, not just in moments of stillness, but in how we speak, move, listen, and act. If you've been on this path for some time, you can see for yourself that ways of speaking and acting that priorly required effort suddenly rise spontaneously in response to the situations that you find yourself in. And the more you are ready to meet this process with open arms, the more it will start opening up to you, until you can fully surrender to the magnificence that has been hiding behind the mundane struggles of everyday life. If you want to learn more about heart-brain coherence as taught by Joe Dispenza, we have a video on the topic that is visible on the end screen now, together with a video about intentional thinking as taught in the Fourth Way system, and the process of surrender as taught by David R. Hawkins. These will assist you in deepening your connection with the infinite field. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time.